Welcome to Engage, leading conversations that matter. Join in the conversation. Send an email to engage@cfpublic.org. Send a recorded talkback message on the free Central Florida Public Media app. Leave a voicemail by calling 407-273-2300, extension 246. Engage is made possible with the support of listeners like you.
You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. Coming up, Florida's Problem Gambling Helpline is tracking a rise in calls for help since the expansion of online sports betting in the state. Plus, the growing economic contributions Latinas are making in Central Florida communities. And with the help of superstar striker Barbra Banda, the Orlando Pride advanced to the National Women's Soccer League Championship map for the first time. We talked to the team fans in Zambia, beaming with pride over their hometown hero about what Orlando's success means to them in the African country. First, though, we are coming off the first weekend of some significant changes planned for downtown Orlando by city leaders to reduce violence. This follows the deadly mass shooting downtown on Halloween night. That is when 2 of the 9 people shot died, and a woman was hurt after being trampled by people running for safety in the crowd of 75,000. City leaders are working to mitigate what they describe as a street party environment. They're moving forward with plans to reopen Orange Avenue to vehicle traffic on Friday and Saturday nights for the first time in years. Now, transitioning from pedestrian only to allowing cars on that busy thoroughfare right in the heart of the bar and nightclub district. That's going to be a gradual process. It started Friday evening, though, when temporary gates and barricades were installed right in the middle of the road. We asked Eric Fuller to join Engage earlier today to share his account of the impact of the changes, including those new barriers. He is the co-owner of Celine Orlando, an event venue downtown. Fuller began our discussion by describing what he's been seeing downtown on the weekends.
I think what I saw happening was really more just creating more difficulty for people to get downtown. It seems like the police had more street closures set up, which went into effect at 11 p.m., which no one knew that. I don't know if there's a miscommunication with the officials and those who are enforcing it, but they actually had like road barriers set up. So you couldn't even get into certain parts of downtown at 11 o'clock. So I think that's important to note because, again, it was never like mentioned and that actually happened. And then aside from that, I think all it did was just make it, again, more difficult to get to our businesses. That's what I saw.
So ultimately, the goal is for the city to allow vehicle traffic again on Orange Avenue, main thoroughfare. So what you're describing is kind of like barricades within that area for pedestrian traffic. Is that correct?
Correct. So they actually were certain roads were like literally blocked, and I don't recall which ones were off the top of my head, but they had actual like police cars blocking the streets. So it was a little confusing because I thought the idea was to allow for more flow of traffic, but they actually did the opposite. And again, some of the cops on the cops on the bikes were even like, "Hey, we didn't even know this was happening until like 9 o'clock tonight." So there's kind of some mixed messaging there. But the city, I guess the idea here, and look, we're in favor of preventing the street party atmosphere. That does us no good. But I don't know if allowing traffic is going to prevent that. And look, I've only owned this business for a year, so I'm relatively new to town. But from my understanding and speaking to other business owners, the city, they had implemented the street closure years ago to, number one, increase pedestrian safety. I guess they were worried about, at the time, there was things happening around the world where people were driving their cars into large, places of gathering. So there was that concern. And I think there was other violence that stemmed from, people driving by their vehicles, in their vehicles. So I think the city's kind of like going back to, I guess, pre the street closure. So I think that's really important to note. I don't have all the data in front of me of how bad or good that was. but I think it's worth noting.
Were you able to see a difference in how what you're describing as confusion among people downtown impacted your business?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely saw a decrease in our sales. We were off from our average sales, about 30% off from what we normally are. I mean, then again, it was. I also think the market's a little spent right now from Halloween, and there was a large event. EDC Orlando was in town last weekend, so I think a lot of people were, a little exhausted from that. So we'll see what happens in the coming weeks, but I hope that whatever it is, give it a fair shot. I think it's worth a try, right? But the city should also be realistic about the results of that, and then we would love if they would take into consideration how that impacts our businesses. So preventing people from parking and just getting to their place of work or where they go to enjoy their evening. I think, the government should not be in that business.
Eric, can you talk about the mood downtown after Halloween and the conversations you had with other venue operators and business owners?
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, it was devastating. I won't even sugarcoat that. It was, it's one of the busiest weekends for a lot of folks, especially in the nightlife in downtown Orlando. So, at least for Celine, it was really tough. I mean, we had a sold out event Thursday night. Obviously, that went through fine on our end. The incident took place Thursday night, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we had essentially 3 sold out events. 2 of those were ticketed. We saw no show rates in excess of 30%, which is extremely high. The drop rate from shows for ticketed events is usually around 10%. So essentially what that is if you buy a ticket to a concert or an event, around 10% of the people just don't show up for whatever reason. Plans change, but we saw a much higher rate. So yeah, it was really concerning. I can tell you one thing that did is it pushed those that were affected closer together. So it has opened up some lines of communications with other business owners. And I think people are really concerned about the tone that was taken by the city and how it kind of felt like it was pinned on us.
What would you like to see change insofar as facilitating a safer downtown corridor?
Look, that's the $1 million question, right? I think that the one thing that really bothers me is that there's this notion that downtown's somehow unsafe. I've said this before, I'm not buying into that. Every city, as tragic as it is, has its flaws. It has some level of violence. Orlando isn't any greater than, I think when you compare us to other cities, I think Orlando is actually a really safe city. I think it's just the messaging and the tone that the city's kind of forcing upon itself and putting out there. Obviously, look, we're all for a safe community. On our part, we do what we can as a venue. So again, we do things like ID checks. So you can't enter our venue if you don't have an ID or if you're not of a certain age. We do pat downs, we do wanding. So I think we're being a good steward, we're being a good member of the community by doing our part. We just don't let anybody walk into our venue and cause trouble. So look, that's really all I can do as a business owner. If somebody unfortunately wants to walk into, a public area, whether that be downtown or in Kissimmee or in iDrive, and cause violence, unfortunately, there's not much I can do. I think what the city could do better of is enforcing some of the laws they do have. So they have loitering laws. They have something called the youth protection, and I might be misstating that. It's like a youth protection law that basically says after a certain time, no one, under the age of 18 is allowed to be out. I want to say it's 10 p.m. There's 2 great examples that give police probable cause to, ask for someone's ID or say, hey, look, you can't loiter in this area. You need to go somewhere or leave. And if you see that person or group, ignoring you, then you should do something about it. I think if you look at a lot of the examples of of the unfortunate violence, that there was some level of loitering involved. They weren't inside of a venue, and they were underage. I think, some other things the city could do could perhaps, and look, I'm never for giving the government more potential ways to abuse their power. For example, the parking lots, like maybe there's tag readers or camera systems in place. A lot of problems seem to happen in the garages. So the city should maybe focus their attention on policing those areas and perhaps punishing those that own the parking lots, which coincidentally enough are owned by the city. So yeah, I think that those would be some of my suggestions.
Eric Fuller is the co-owner of Celine Orlando. It's been a year since mobile sports betting was made legal in Florida. We'll look at how these apps are cultivating a new generation of problem gamblers. If you miss any part of our show today, you can always subscribe to the Engage podcast and listen whenever it is convenient for you. This program will be available on demand at cfpublic.org. While you are at our website, you can find out more information about our next Engage event. We'll be out in the community again starting tomorrow at 6 o'clock at Oli's Kitchen and Barbecue in Orlando. We'll be talking with the community about all things Florida Classic, and you can join us there for the conversation. You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. Ahead on this program, the Orlando Pride dispatched with the Kansas City Current on Sunday to advance to the National Women's Soccer League Championship, and nobody is happier than the Pride fans in Zambia.
Whenever there's a game for Orlando Pride, we post on our different media just to communicate with other people to say, guys, today is the big day.
We'll talk with Duncan Chitoshi of Zambia's Orlando Pride fan club. First, though, instead of heading to a casino cashier or a sportsbook kiosk, you can place your game day bet right there on your smartphone. It's been a year since mobile sports betting was made legal in Florida through the site Hard Rock Bet, operated by the Seminole Tribe. With that ease of access comes growing concerns about problem gaming. Local addiction hotlines are seeing more, and younger people reach out for support. The Florida Council on Compulsive Gambling is seeing a rise since the introduction of online sports betting. The organization reports a 110% increase in Florida online gambling help contacts since last year. Jennifer Cruz is the executive director of the Florida Council on Compulsive Gambling. She joined Engage along with UCLA gambling addiction research psychologist Rory Reed, who started our conversation by describing the changes he's seen in the last year.
Anytime you add another layer of gambling, we certainly see an increase not only in problem gamblers calling the helpline, but also we see a certain very demographic population, particularly with sports bettors, tends to be younger men, often single men, and the impulsivity in that particular age group seems to be a little bit higher, so we see a little more impulsivity, which translates to racking up problem gambling-related consequences more quickly than people who have historically turned to other mediums of gambling.
What are some of those consequences?
Well, financial consequences are certainly part of the equation, and so that's part of it. We also see some of them, because they're a younger population, sometimes they'll take their college money that was for tuition and they'll gamble it. We see that they're spending more time late at night, and as a result, that also translates to difficulty functioning in the work the next day, losing jobs, or difficulty at school. And for those people that are partnered, it often translates to relationship problems because of the financial problems put a strain on the relationship dynamics.
Can we talk about the mobile aspect of this gaming? People can spend hours upon hours on their phone. Do you see that translate with these apps being designed for prolonged engagement for betting as well?
I think there are a number of different things that we see that are translating to the mobile apps for gambling. In part, the idea is to for the gaming industry is to create sustained attention And that can happen through all sorts of things that get integrated into the gambling, and then more bets, right? Because that translates to, more revenue. But for example, if you look at sports betting, in-play parlays during the game is something that we didn't used to see, but now we see that more and more. That would just be an example of how the mobile apps are keeping people tied to their phones and wagering more money.
Can we talk a bit about the just addictive nature? Alcohol, drugs, they chemically alter the brain. How does gambling have that same effect when a person, isn't actually putting a substance in their body?
So, we've taken a look at a number of different studies that have compared and contrasted substance use disorders such as drug and alcohol abuse and gambling. And they typically, in the neuroimaging studies, we see various parallel parts of the brain being lit up, suggesting that the same neural circuitry is implicated in behavioral addictions such as gambling as substance use addictions. And certainly we see things like increasing the amount of the substance, so to speak, in terms of gambling. We see escalation patterns in terms of the severity of consequences. But one of the things that is different is that gambling is a hidden addiction. And so often people can go for longer periods of time unnoticed because they don't have those outward manifestations. There's also a difference in the terms of the reinforcement schedules. If people think back to their Psychology 101 class and Pavlov's dog and the way that behavior is reinforced, every time you use a drug or you drink alcohol, you get that buzz, you get that intoxication. That's not true with gambling, right? There's just this anticipation of the win, but the win doesn't always happen. And so it's randomly rewarded and intermittent. And so we call that, the psychological term is an intermittent random reinforcement schedule. And what that means is it comes, it doesn't come, and we don't know how big the win is going to be. And when we look at schedules that kind of reinforce behavior and create addiction, gambling addiction based on those types of behavior reinforcers is actually more addictive than substance use disorders.
Do the people who create these platforms know that?
What I would say is I think the gaming industry certainly hires people that understand how to create sustained attention, increased wagering, making games have more elements of novelty and variety that, again, in turn translates to sustained attention and wagering. And I've had interactions with some of these folks over the years, and they would say, well, we're just making our games more appealing. And I take odds with that. I see that differently. I think the way we would characterize it is it makes the games more addictive. And so there is a difference of opinion about what the way the games are being developed and implemented. I think they understand addiction. I think they understand the neuroscience of how to create sustained attention and increased wagering, and it's being used and implemented into the games, although I'm not sure anybody's talking about it.
Jennifer Cruz, if I could bring you into the conversation now, can we bring this back to Central Florida? We talked a bit with Dr. Reed just about the sports betting population being men. Is that what you see, and are you seeing that demographic shift with the ease of mobile gaming as well?
So yeah, on Florida's helpline 888-ADMIT-IT, we are definitely seeing younger males, right, with the online sports betting. I will tell you, we're seeing more women now. When I say more women, it doesn't amount to anything substantial in terms of a percentage increase, but in terms of the numbers, before, historically, I would tell you helpline data would not reveal any women sports bettors. Now, just this past 11 months, we had 10 help seekers that were women. So it might not seem like a lot, but it's definitely a substantial change.
What do you do given that information? Is that a trend you're worried about? Does that change your approach? What do you do in your role?
So I would say that the biggest approach right now is prevention. Prevention is key. And we're seeing, amongst both genders, that 21 to 25-year-old range is really where it's at. That's where the bulk of the individuals who are reaching out for help on our helpline are in that age range. So, targeting kids, even before they reach that age group is important in terms of prevention messages, letting them know, the risks that are associated. A lot of times I'll hear on the helpline that, if someone is in college and, they're going to school to learn, finances because they think it will help them make more money gambling. So, I mean, we're definitely seeing where, there seems to be that skill element that makes people think that, if they can just learn more or better understand their finances or learn more about the game or the players, then they're really going to, win big and change their lives with sports betting.
Where does that come from? Where does that confidence that there is a skill in this? Or is there any truth to that?
Well, there are certain different vulnerabilities that people can have that would potentially get them involved in gambling. But what we do see, for example, irrational beliefs about the odds of winning, or certain populations like college-age men would be more susceptible, partially because at that age their frontal cortex of their brain is still evolving and developing. But I also think that if you look at some of the marketing strategies that are being used for sports wagering, there does seem to be this message that hey, if you learn more about your teams and more about your players, it's going to increase the odds of winning, and all the while kind of just neglecting to emphasize at the end of the day, this is a game of chance, and there's elements of chance involved here. And I've had people that really are just sports enthusiasts beyond what you can even imagine, and they could quote every little statistic from every single player, and yet they end up in a situation where they're like, I'm, even with all this knowledge, I'm not able to beat the odds, and I'm losing money. And I think even some of the professional gamblers now are getting out of sports betting because they're saying it is too difficult to beat the algorithms of the gaming industry and actually make money. But these young kids haven't learned that lesson yet, and they don't know that yet. And so they actually still have this unrealistic, I would almost call it delusional optimism that somehow they can make money doing this.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And what we see on the helpline here is that those younger adults, tend to spend more money gambling. They have, much higher lifetime losses than the average population amongst, other gambling types. They're earning more money though, too. So they're earning more and they're spending more, but they don't have the experience, with life, with money, with financial management. So they're going into debt. Credit card debt is seen quite frequently.
I'm curious what you think about this. You do see the brief disclaimers added to commercials for Seminole Hard Rock's gambling and gaming app. Does that have any impact on people?
So you can't get help if you don't know the help exists. And yeah, we do track how people hear of the helpline. One thing that's key too is remembering that in the state of Florida, 888-ADMIT-IT is the only state-specific helpline number for gambling problems. There are other national numbers that are advertised on, other operators who are not the Seminole Hard Rock Bet. The Seminole Hard Rock Bet advertises the 888-ADMIT-IT number in Florida. But sometimes you'll see other, national numbers on television ads, and those numbers can create confusion and can actually direct people to the wrong state because those national numbers are geo-targeted based upon someone's area code of the phone number that you're using to seek help. So I will say, yes, I think that the ads and including the right number is key to, getting people access to help.
Within Florida specifically, does the Florida Council on Compulsive Gambling, do you have any concerns about this just becoming the norm, the normalization of this online betting?
I think gambling has become normalized in our culture, all types of gambling. It's not just online gambling. I mean, there's gambling in all kinds of regards. You can watch television commercials where like weight loss challenges. It's oh well, you set your goal for I think I'm gonna bet I'm gonna lose 40 pounds in 6 weeks, and if you reach that goal, then you get rewarded. So I think just normalization, across society as a whole is definitely increasing, the acceptability of gambling, and increased access plus increased acceptability, of course, equals an increased vulnerability towards developing a problem. One thing that I thought was significant was the increase with online sports bettors in problems at school or at work reported. We saw 52% said they were having problems at school and 48% problems at work. So, that prior to sports betting's legalization, we were seeing 25% of online gamblers were saying that they were having problems at school, and 38% stated they were having problems at work. So I think the accessibility factor definitely can, lead people to get into trouble in other areas of their lives. Financial problems as a precipitating event for seeking help is number one amongst online sports bettors. So, like we talked about earlier, they're making more money, they're spending more money, and as a result, they're having more financial difficulties due to their gambling, and as a result, are reaching out for help.
Rory Reed is an assistant professor of psychiatry at UCLA and a research psychologist. Jennifer Cruz is the executive director of the Florida Council on Compulsive Gambling. A new U.S. Latina GDP report is out. It's the first of its kind of research on the growing economic activity of Hispanic women. It shows Latinas contribute more than $1.3 trillion to the country's gross domestic product, which is actually a 50% increase over the last decade. This inaugural report details the economic contributions of Latinas, and it is funded by Bank of America. Shayla Torres is a business banking expert with the company and based in Orlando. Torres joins Engage to talk about the factors influencing this growth and what it looks like on an everyday level in Central Florida.
The factors that are contributing to the growth of Latinas, first of all, I have to tell you, we currently make up about 9% of the U.S. population, but yet we're responsible for about 30% of the growth currently in the U.S. labor force, specifically since 2010. And as a Latina woman myself, there has been an increase in education. You have more taking their bachelor's degrees, going to school, becoming professionals, and they're going to the workforce. And I tell you, one of the biggest things as a Hispanic woman, our culture, usually back in the days, we're very much into being at home and taking care of the children. Not anymore. You see the Hispanic women really taking their control of their professional life and being a provider themselves. So that has truly turned around some of the growth that you've been seeing.
What do you think this is doing for the Latina community in Central Florida? What do you hear from business owners that you work with?
So currently right now, with the Latina GDP report that recently was published, one of the factors is that the GDP is actually $1.3 trillion, which is up from $661 billion. That is larger than our entire state of Florida. So as a matter of fact, I'll tell you that it's larger than 47 states, for the exception of California, New York, and Texas. What I hear from business owners currently is that they're able to provide for their family. They're able to hire more employees, and they're able to actually see growth. One of the reports that we put out, which is the Women and Minority Business Owner Report, one of the things that they see, specifically Latina women, is that they expect their revenues to increase. About 78% of them expect their revenue to increase. So think about what that's doing to the Orlando economy, Central Florida. Not just what is happening to their business, they're putting it right back because they're able to hire more individuals. They're able to use more growth to bring their business forward. You see quite a bit of them that are planning to expand their business. Over half of them are planning to hire. And you see quite a bit of them that are looking forward to expanding because they're actually applying for different kinds of lending to be able to bring their business forward.
Can we talk about some of the unique challenges Latina business owners face? I know gender pay gap, while improving, it's still wider for Hispanic and Black women.
Yes, that is actually correct. They are, about 53% of them are experiencing challenges in accessing capital. There are some concerns with inflation, right? The political environment, interest rates, recession. So they do see that those kind of concerns right now may impact their business. but more than 70% of them are hopeful, and they see that they're going to be expanding. Some of the ways that we support is that we have access to capital and resources. We actually have the Minority Business Development Agency, or is the MBDA. It's part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. It is solely dedicated to helping minority-owned businesses grow. We actually have, and Bank of America is one of the largest contributors towards CDFI, which is Community Development Financial Institutions. These provide access to capital through grants and programs that historically underrepresent communities and organizations, specifically for minority and entrepreneurship. Some of the things that we do, we have local resources like the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of Central Florida, Prospera. These are nonprofit agencies that spend quite a bit of resources to help them, whether it's loan ranging from $500 all the way up to whatever they need, as well as lowering down payments for them and helping them with conventional loans.
In the study that we've been talking about today, it builds on previous studies looking at the growing economic contributions of the Latino community. What is the goal? What will you do with the information that you are gathering?
So the information that we have, we use it as a way to know what resources and education we can provide to our clients. And not just our clients, anybody that comes to either the nonprofits that we support or our website. So Bank of America is really showing employees, any small businesses, by prioritizing local Latina-owned small businesses. Like if there is a business owner that we know that is Hispanically owned, we may share it with all our employees and say, hey, this is a small business that is Latina owned. Is the best and easiest way you can support small business in general. We always use our networks to amplify local Latino-owned businesses. So when we're in the community and we're doing any volunteer event or any networking event, we're using our local business owners. We're inviting, whether it's food, it's events, we're really trying to use some of those local business owners so that we can promote their business. And that is important for us to continue to have referral sources among each other. And then we're sharing it online. Our social media platform, if you look, especially on LinkedIn, Sharon Miller is our president for business banking, and she recently promoted Latina-owned businesses. It's a great way to provide excellent service of our products by publishing it and sharing positive online reviews. These are our clients. These are who we're supporting, and you should go out and support them as well.
What do you think other businesses in the community should understand as we look at the impact of the Latina community to the economy?
Well, if you're not supporting or you're not advertising to the Hispanic community, I mean, you're missing out on a big portion of the growth that can happen to your own business. Because you just saw it from the GDP report. It's definitely our community is growing. And I say our because I'm part of that community. We're growing. There's a 30% growth in the U.S. labor force. So if you're not buying from a Hispanic-owned business, chances are that one of your employees is a Hispanic employee. So in order to have employee satisfaction, your own employees that you are having an employee on, you're also helping them and their family and culture is just going to create more of associate satisfaction. And it's only going to provide even more impact for the communities that we're serving, because the Hispanic community is not just part of our community, it's the community. It has grown in a large portion of the time, and we need to make sure that we're helping them. And one way to help them is to support the business owners, because it just serves the entire community. I mean, I hate to say the Hispanic community when it's really all our community. And by supporting Hispanic business owners, specifically women and Latina, we're really supporting the Central Florida community.
And other takeaways you would like to highlight?
One of the things that I saw is that 81% of Hispanic Latino business owners also say that they have a labor shortage, which is impacting their business. So if you think about what is happening currently in our local economy, there is so many job openings, and it's for everybody's having a job opening, not just Hispanic, Latino-owned businesses, but all small business owners are having them. And I think it's important for those business owners that have any job openings to really consider employing people that match their community. So if you are in need of hiring, making sure that you're hiring someone that matches your community, and that actually includes also having someone that is Hispanic or Latino. So I would just encourage people to get to know the people that live in the community, especially when it comes to the Hispanic Latinos as well.
Shayla Torres is a senior vice president at Bank of America based in Orlando. And coming up, we're going to meet the Orlando Pride Fan Club, 8,000 miles from Central Florida. If you're heading out, you can listen to Central Florida Public Media's Engage live on the radio at 90.7 FM in Greater Orlando and the Space Coast and 89.5 FM in Ocala and the Villages. Or stream us live at cfpublic.org or on the free Central Florida Public Media app. You can tell your smart speaker to play Central Florida Public Media. All of our shows are available on demand at cfpublic.org. As always, just a reminder, we want to hear from you. Let us know what you'd like to hear more about or maybe what you were glad you were heard. You can send us an email to engage@cfpublic.org, or you can send us a talkback on that free Central Florida Public Media app I mentioned. Just go to the menu, select Send Us a Talkback, record your question or feedback, hit send, and we will receive it. And you can always give us a call. The number is 407-273-2300, extension 246. We will get your voicemail if you leave us one. Thank you for listening to Engage here on Central Florida Public Media. You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. More than 14,000 fans gathered at Inter & Co Stadium on Sunday to watch the beloved Orlando Pride take down the Kansas City Current 3-2 in a competitive playoff match that will see the Pride advance to the National Women's Soccer League Championship against the Washington Spirit. Nearly 8,000 miles away, another group of Orlando Pride fans are gathered in the Zambian capital of Lusaka to watch the game.
Orlando Pride, then it was like it never used to exist, but now you can ask anyone, everyone knows about Orlando Pride and they are happy about it.
That's Duncan Chitoshi. He's 36, manages a construction supply business, and is a divorced father of 3. And he may be the biggest Orlando Pride fan in all of Zambia.
The support that I've been having with the Orlando Pride, it all started when we saw Barbra shifting from China to America. Everyone was so excited and they wanted to know more about Orlando Pride and the American League. Finally, when Barbra left that side and when even the people started analyzing and eventually they were in love with Orlando Pride. And as I'm talking to you now, almost more than 60% of our Zambian fans, they are in love with Orlando Pride. Currently, among all the teams in America, Orlando Pride has got a huge fan base in Zambia.
Duncan is talking about Barbra Banda, the superstar striker acquired earlier this year by the Pride. In addition to being the starting striker for the Pride, the captain of the Zambian women's team, and the highest-scoring African soccer player in Olympic history, Banda stands as an inspiration to millions of Zambian girls and young women.
Now, as we are talking, a lot of young girls, they are busy working hard, trying to do what Barbra has done, because currently she has been a great inspiration to the young generation. Actually, now as we are talking, almost everyone is wishing to play in America because they feel like American League is now on top of the world, is the best, and the marketing and everything is so exciting. So everyone is working so hard in order for them at least to find a way of joining American leagues.
For Duncan, football is something of a life lesson. He knows most players won't make a living of it, but he can see how it can inspire the next generation to work together to improve Zambia.
My wish is at least to see a lot of young girls joining the field and at least making a difference in life, because now I think football has been an amazing sport in Zambia, and it has inspired and changed a lot of young people's lives. So my wish is to see more of the young people to come on board and transform their lives.
When the Pride plays, fans have to set their alarms. An 8 p.m. kickoff in Orlando means a 3 a.m. start for viewers in Zambia. Duncan and his friends maintain something of a phone tree to make sure nobody misses a match.
Whenever there's a game for Orlando Pride, we normally post on our different media just to communicate with other people to say, guys, today is the big day. So you find that people, they would go to sleep early so that perhaps they can wake up as early as possible so that during the game, they won't be dozing. So like on Sunday, my plan is definitely I need to go to bed early so that I sleep a bit to kill the pressure of sleeping. And then besides that, once I'm done with that one, even my colleagues and everyone else, I'll communicate with them so that we are up and watching the game, giving the full support to our team.
And despite a thriving economy in this giant South Central African nation, utilities can still be unreliable. But Lusaka's Pride fans never let that get in the way of a viewing party.
Even though we are having a power outage challenge, but people, they are always awake. Whenever there's no power, people, they will find access to their mobile phones in order to watch the game live on their devices.
Lusaka's Pride fans are very excited to see their Barbra Banda lead the team to their first trip to the National Women's Soccer League Championship match. But Duncan has a much bigger dream.
I wish one day I can come that side and watch live. I can't even imagine, because that would be a big dream come true. You just don't know. You just don't know.
The Pride will square off against the Spirit on Saturday night at 8 in Kansas City. And that was Duncan Chitoshi with the Orlando Pride Fan Club in Zambia, speaking with us from his home in the capital of the African country. That is all for today's edition of Engage. We are back Thursday when we look at the Florida Classic. We're going to be in the community starting at 6 p.m. tomorrow. We'll be at Oli's Kitchen and Barbecue in Orlando, talking about the legacy and significance of the upcoming Florida Classic with representatives of historically black colleges and universities and community leaders. Come and join us. You can find more details at cfpublic.org. I'm Sharon Stone. Thank you for the company. All Things Considered is coming up following NPR News.